In this episode, we shift into a review mode that is designed to make the ideas stick, not just sound familiar for a moment. Spaced retrieval is a learning approach where you bring concepts back up from memory in a slightly different way, which strengthens recall and helps you apply the ideas under pressure. Domain 3, as you have experienced it here, is about auditing AI in a way that is evidence-driven, risk-aware, and actionable, and it includes the practical tools and techniques auditors use to see what is happening in real systems. The word simplified does not mean shallow, and it does not mean we ignore the hard parts. It means we focus on the core mental models and the few high-leverage techniques you can carry with you and apply to many situations without getting lost in jargon. You are going to hear familiar themes like analytics, reporting clarity, and responsible use of AI within audit itself, but the goal is to connect them into a tight set of concepts you can recall quickly. By the end, you should feel like Domain 3 is not a pile of separate topics, but a coherent way of thinking about assurance. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first Domain 3 idea to retrieve is that auditors do not audit vibes, they audit evidence. Evidence is anything that can be verified, like records of approvals, monitoring review logs, incident tickets, policy statements, access review results, and documented decision points. When you feel uncertain about a claim, the Domain 3 move is to ask what would prove it, where that proof would live, and whether the proof is reliable. This is the difference between believing that controls exist and demonstrating that controls operate. A policy is evidence of intent, but operational records are evidence of behavior, and Domain 3 pushes you to value behavior evidence heavily. If you remember nothing else, remember this. A control that cannot be demonstrated is hard to trust, and a control that exists only in a document is not enough when risk is real and changing. This mindset turns auditing from a debate into a disciplined investigation where conclusions have support. The second idea to retrieve is that audit work starts with a clear question, because analytics and tools are meaningless without purpose. In Domain 3, you learn that data can help you see drift, anomalies, and control breakdown trends. But you only get value when you define what you are trying to detect and why it matters. A good audit question sounds like a risk question, such as whether monitoring detects performance decline quickly enough to prevent harm, or whether deployment approvals are consistent enough to prove accountability. Once you have the question, you choose the evidence and the analysis method that can answer it. This prevents you from drowning in metrics and dashboards that look impressive but do not connect to a decision. Beginners often assume that more data automatically means better auditing, but Domain 3 teaches you that better auditing means more targeted data, better definitions, and better interpretation. The tool serves the question, not the other way around. The third idea to retrieve is baseline thinking, because you cannot detect meaningful change without knowing what normal looked like. Domain 3 emphasized that drift and trends require comparisons over time, and comparisons require stable definitions and consistent measurement. Baselines might be performance during an early stable period, a rolling average, or a known good reference point tied to a specific model version and data period. Without baselines, every fluctuation can look like an emergency or nothing can look important, and both outcomes weaken controls. Baseline thinking also requires skepticism about data quality, because if measurement definitions change, trends can be illusions. A mature audit approach checks whether metrics are calculated consistently and whether logs are complete enough to support conclusions. This is not a math obsession, it is an integrity obsession. Baselines are what turn raw numbers into meaningful signals about risk. The fourth idea to retrieve is the difference between drift and anomalies, because they point to different kinds of problems and require different responses. Drift is gradual change, like the system slowly becoming less accurate because the world changed. Anomalies are sudden or unusual events, like a spike in errors, a burst of suspicious usage, or an unexpected drop in system availability. In Domain 3 terms, drift detection is about early warning and ongoing fitness, while anomaly detection is about immediate attention and triage. Both require thresholds and triggers, because a signal that does not lead to action is just a statistic. Auditors evaluate whether the organization defines what counts as concerning, who is responsible for review, and what escalation looks like when signals cross boundaries. Remembering the drift versus anomaly distinction helps you avoid vague statements about monitoring and instead talk concretely about what should be watched and what should happen when patterns change. The fifth idea to retrieve is that trends can reveal control breakdown even when no single failure looks dramatic. Control breakdown trends include rising exceptions, increasing skipped reviews, longer response times, more frequent overrides, or repeated bypass of gates and approvals. These trends matter because controls often erode quietly under pressure, staffing changes, or competing priorities. Domain 3 taught you that analytics is not just about model behavior. It is also about control behavior. If the number of policy exceptions is increasing, that is a control signal. If alerts are regularly unreviewed, that is a control signal. If releases happen faster but with less documented testing, that is a control signal. Auditors use these patterns to tell a story about risk rising over time, which is often more persuasive to leaders than isolated anecdotes. Trends are how you prove that governance is weakening, not just speculate that it might. The sixth idea to retrieve is reporting as a tool for action, not as a trophy. Domain 3 emphasized that audit reports must be understood by executives and usable by teams, which means clarity, prioritization, and evidence-backed claims. Executives need a concise risk narrative tied to business impact, while teams need specific findings that point to fixable control gaps. You learn that strong findings connect condition, cause, risk, evidence, and remediation, because that structure makes the report defensible and makes remediation practical. You also learned that tone matters, because a report that feels like blame invites defensiveness rather than improvement. Domain 3 reporting is disciplined writing that separates what was observed from what is inferred and that matches certainty to evidence strength. When you can do that, your report becomes a lever that moves behavior, not just a document that sits on a server. The seventh idea to retrieve is follow-up as the mechanism that keeps risk reduced after the report is delivered. A one-time fix can look good briefly, but controls can decay, and AI environments change, so follow-up validates that remediation is operating and durable. Domain 3 follow-up checks for implementation evidence and operating evidence, and it cares more about operating evidence because it proves behavior. Follow-up also revisits the cause, because symptom-only fixes often fail over time. A good follow-up approach checks whether responsibilities are clear, whether the workflow enforces the control, and whether evidence continues to appear consistently across time and across releases. You learn that quiet periods do not prove controls work, because absence of incidents can be luck or can be a sign of weak detection. Follow-up is how audits become a continuous improvement cycle rather than a series of snapshots. The eighth idea to retrieve is that when auditors use AI, they must govern their own use with the same seriousness they expect from everyone else. Domain 3 covered risks like bias, leakage, and over-reliance, and it emphasized that AI should assist, not replace, judgment. Bias can shape what the audit notices and how it frames risk. Leakage can expose sensitive audit information, and over-reliance can weaken skepticism and make conclusions less defensible. You learn that safe use involves boundaries on which tasks AI can support, careful data minimization, strong human review, and clear traceability back to raw evidence. You also learn that AI can help plan and execute audits, but the audit team must not outsource priorities, conclusions, or risk ratings to automated suggestions. This is a core Domain 3 theme because credibility depends on accountability, and accountability must remain human. If you remember this, you will naturally ask whether AI is being used to enhance work or to hide weak reasoning. The ninth idea to retrieve is preserving evidence quality when AI is involved in execution and reporting. Evidence quality relies on reliability, relevance, completeness, and traceability, and AI can threaten these if it introduces transformed outputs that are treated as evidence. Domain 3 taught you to keep raw artifacts separate from summaries, to treat AI outputs as working aids rather than proof, and to verify key statements against sources. You also learn to watch for hallucinated conclusions in reporting, which often appear as small invented facts or overconfident language. The prevention is constrained drafting from verified observations, careful certainty wording, and strong peer review. These techniques keep the audit defensible because they ensure that every claim can be traced and justified. The simplified takeaway is that AI can help you write and organize, but it must not create new facts or erase the chain of evidence. The 10th idea to retrieve is that Domain 3 tools and techniques are connected, not separate. Analytics supports detection, detection supports findings, findings support remediation, and follow-up confirms risk reduction, while responsible AI use supports the audit function's own integrity. When you connect these, you can see that Domain 3 is really about building and protecting a feedback loop. The loop starts with evidence collection and measurement, moves through analysis and reporting, and returns through remediation and follow-up to improve controls over time. This loop matters because AI systems and their environments change, and static assurance is not enough. The most effective auditors are not the ones who know the most buzzwords. They are the ones who can keep this loop operating in a disciplined way, with clear evidence and clear accountability. When you can describe that loop, you can explain Domain 3 simply and apply it to new situations. This spaced retrieval review should leave you with a small set of high-value memory anchors you can recall quickly without needing a diagram or a checklist. Domain 3 is evidence-first, question-driven, and trend-aware, with baselines that make change visible and triggers that turn signals into action. It is reporting that ties cause, risk, evidence, and remediation together in language executives and teams can use, and it is follow-up that verifies controls operate and keep operating. It is also self-governance when AI is used inside the audit process, protecting against bias, leakage, over-reliance, and hallucinated conclusions. If you can remember those threads and how they connect, you will not only recall Domain 3 concepts, you will be able to apply them under pressure in a scenario where details feel messy. That ability to stay evidence-driven and action-focused is the real purpose of Domain 3 and the reason these tools and techniques matter.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.